Welcome back, guys. So I have been busy since the last episode. I've set a couple things up here in our base. I've made a little room here on the second level of our tech quarter. Moved in some mechanism machines. I got tired of having to run back to the starter cabin every time I wanted to make some infused metal or recharge my jetpack. So I made the machines here. I also picked two other machines from Mechanism that might prove useful. We have the Crusher, which, if you will recall... I'm not going to find the recipe, but allowed us to make diamond dust, which gave us our jetpack, so I know that that might be useful. And I also got an osmium compressor. This is going to allow us to make obsidian ingots, which among other things, are basically used in advanced mechanism recipes, some of which are actually kind of awesome. This atomic disassembler is a crazy tool. You know, it takes out everything, and it can one-hit kill just about any mob. And it would be pretty neat to get a robot at some point, because everybody likes a robot. Not robot, robot. But to do that, I'll need an atomic core, which is not a small undertaking. So if we go downstairs, you can see this room I think is the same as last time I showed you, but if we port over here, I've just started using this Staff of Traveling again. It really amuses me. Here's our Tinker's Construct room. You can see that I have sort of finished it out a little bit. I got some lava hooked up. I've got a chest that we can use to add things to the controller. We can turn the that on and off. I've also here got an automatic setup, so we can automatically drain liquids that have smelted into blocks. That will automatically get taken down here. Alternately, we could automatically cast things. And I've got this one set up currently to manually cast, because I found that I was casting way too many of the things I wanted. I set this up because I wanted some more steel. And that's the other advantage of having, let's see, yes, this metallurgic infuser here. This is the way we're currently getting steel. We take iron, put it in here with coal, and then we can bring it down down here to the Tinker's Construct room and smelt it in the smeltery. I also let the tree farm run for a little bit and got enough wood to finish this floor of our base. So today we'll probably be building our first major power generation here. But I did one additional thing. I came here, let's turn game sounds down because that jetpack is loud. I came down here and I dug off tunnels at different levels and noted what major resources could be obtained by extending that tunnel, which I think is going to be pretty useful for us in the future, especially currently this level. We're going to need some more quartz if we ever want to expand our applied energistics system. We are nearly out of the stuff. So at some point off camera I will probably go quartz mining. Theoretically, I could send our turtle Snappy to do some. I'd have to find another program. The one we currently have on him is just for mining out large squares. As you can see, we've also been getting some visitors, and I'm not sure whether it's because I've leveled up my Ars Magica or just random spawns, but we're getting light mages spawn all around. They've got basically player skins, but they are NPCs. As far as I can tell, oh, if I right-click, they'll talk to me. Or at least that one does. Cool. Maybe eventually when I get powerful enough, they have more interactions. I know I've fought a dark mage before, but the light mages are not, I don't think, meant to be enemies. I've also finished up this area. This is going to be our sort of plant farming area, and potentially a couple of other things too. You know, if we need to breed animals, which we might, this is where we might set that up. What else? Squid. At some point we're going to want a squid farm for reasons. Well, basically, squid are a good source of ink, and squid can't be spawned by an auto spawner except in water, and so it sometimes makes more sense to have squid and to set up ranchers on them than to try and spawn extra squid. I think that's all I've done since last we met. Let's check my bag, make sure I don't have anything that surprises even me in here. I made a few flicker jars. Flickers, I think, are little mobs added by Ars Magica that can be used. Basically, you can trap them and then they'll do things like increase plant growth or make animals breed for you. I saw a few flickers out by the spawn cabin, but when I went back to try and catch them, they had despawned. So I've got these flicker jars in case we see more. Oh, I think I might have also expanded out the AE system a little bit. We've now got a full drive, which is nice. Although I might have done that the episode before. Forgive me. I have not been keeping track, I guess, super well of what I did recently. We've got a lot of progress to make, and so it's going pretty quickly. Okay, so we are looking at the Big Reactors mod. The sort of key piece of this mod is, in fact, the reactor, which is a large or a variably sized multi-block structure. So most of it, okay, let's see. Yeah, the core thing that we need is reactor casing. The other thing we need is yellorium fuel rod. Oh, okay, so I've looked into what the more efficient reactor designs are, and we're going to make one that's really efficient. Oh, and that's it for... Okay. This reactor should take yellorium, like this, and basically convert it into RF power. And it'll do so at a very favorable rate, where we get, I'm not sure actually, but many hundreds of thousands, I think at least, RF per fuel rod. it'll be pretty good. It will supply our base for quite a while, and I think when we outgrow the reactor, we might be able to directly upgrade it by going into some of the turbines, which can vastly improve the power output of your reactor by using it to produce steam and then using the steam to drive a turbine. But for now, we'll do a simple reactor, and we are going to need many more reactor casings. The reactor that we want to make is 7 by 7 by 3. So to do that, we are going to need more graphite bars. Okay, and that is charcoal and gravel, which we can do if I grab some more gravel. So if we think about this, that reactor design, I was talking about 7 by 7 by 3, which means 7 times 7 is 49. So each of its two sides will need 49 reactor casings, which is quite a lot. Okay, let's see what we can do now with that much graphite. Okay. Oh, and now we're out of steel. Okay. As you can see, I took some of the tons of spruce wood we got. We've got over 1,000 now. And I made it into charcoal because, well, because I knew we would need charcoal for steel and for graphite. But now we have our metallurgic infuser right here. I'm curious. One charcoal gets, 20 carbon. Okay, I think that's double what you get from regular coal, which means that one stack of charcoal should be able to infuse one stack of iron ingots. Okay, while that is going, I realized there's one more thing we are going to need for our reactor, and that is liquid ender. I think that's what it's called. Liquefied ender. The way, we could theoretically do it with a smeltery. That might be wise. The other way we can get it, the recipe doesn't seem to be appearing here. Oh, you know what? It's because resonant ender is what we want. Resonant ender, the primary way to get it is through a magma crucible. The magma crucible is added by thermal expansion and has a number of useful recipes. It can, for example, take stone and use it to make lava. It could also, what's that? Coal? I don't know what liquefacted coal is for. It can make energized glowstone, though, and here we go, destabilized redstone, which are both used in some advanced recipes. So we will eventually need one, and so I think we'll need to make ourselves a thermal expansion room. I'm just thinking about where we'll want to put that. Let's see what from thermal expansion we're going to need. So we probably won't need a furnace or a pulverizer. We might someday need a sawmill. Induction smelters can be useful, although I think their function is replicated by our an alloy furnace? Is that what it is? Our Ender IO furnace. We'll need a magma crucible. We will need the fluid transposer for certain recipes. Oh, and we will want an energetic diffuser. Okay, so this is actually going to be a somewhat large room. So, I think we should put it here above our Tinker's Construct room. Okay, there's one more thing we can look at, and that is looking at mods. So what other kinds of rooms will we need here in the tech quarter? We will need an advanced genetics room, and this is one that I want to set up sooner than later. It's going to make us much more powerful. We'll need a buildcraft room primarily for its the assembly table. That will be helpful to us. Although that's a pretty small room. Let's see, we will need a room if we ever plan on doing bees. So that's another room we'll need some space for. Oh, here is my, okay. Do it by mod, and then I scroll here. Okay. So that's everything I see so far. Dartcraft is magical. We've already got Ender IO. We might want an engineer's toolbox room at some point, but I think I'm not going to plan to make one. I don't know if there's any unique function of engineer's toolbox or unique structures that I'll really want to dedicate space to. Similarly, factorization I won't necessarily need. So the other thing we will need space for, though, is industrial craft and GregTech, and that actually takes up a lot of space. Okay, so we may also save room somewhere for miscellaneous mods, I guess, just in case we want to add anything random or have a single machine we need from a certain mod. But I do think this is a good space for thermal expansion. And as you can see, I've kind of been building things close together. You know, I've got all these rooms one on top of each other and next to each other. And I'm doing that because I want to be able to pack them in as tightly as possible. So I'm going to start building out this room and wait for that metallurgic infuser to finish. And I'll be right back. Well, it's not pretty yet. I don't know what I'd do to pretty it up anyway, but here is our thermal expansion room. I decided to go ahead and make like one of each of the machines, although some of them are not very well set up if I ever do want to use them. I've got the furnace and pulverizer, so that's another option. Oh, you know what? I reversed the order of how I would like those. Anyway, I've got an induction smelter. Here's what we came for, the magma crucible and fluid transposer. So the crucible's cool, that's what took our ender pearls and turned them into the resonant ender. The transposer, though, is a crucial part of this because that will allow us to actually take the resonant ender and do something with it. For example, fill a bucket. this is also, you can unfill, or empty, I suppose would be the word. We're going to store the resonant ender here for the time being, just so I don't have to carry it around with me. We've got a sawmill that can increase the efficiency of getting planks, a glacial precipitator, which will allow us to get ice and snow if we want it, but it takes in water, so we'll have to make a better setup for it at some point. Put an aqueous accumulator under it. Here's a cyclic assembler. This can use power and fluids even to create items. So it's basically a crafting table, but can do it automatically. Eventually, we might set a few of these up to make things that we really want a lot of. But for the time being, I kind of just made it for completion's sake. And here we have our energetic infuser. So now we officially, I think, have replicated all the functionality of what was at the starter base. I guess besides the Mistcraft stuff. Oh yeah, like ink mixing table and things like that. But we can probably make one of those easily enough when we decide to get into Mistcraft. I also sent the steel down to the smeltery. Let's see if it's still... I decided to make 2 stacks of steel. Looks like the second stack has finished up as well. I cast ingots. And it ended up, yep, right here. So we still have plenty of steel. And I went ahead, made another stack of reactor casings. I think this will be what we need, or at least most of it. So let's check. There are a couple of other things we'll need that require these reactor casings to craft. So inside we'll have yellorium fuel rods, and then on top of each fuel rod we'll need a control rod. So we will need 9 of these. Okay. Those go together. We will also need a reactor controller. For that we'll need one of our diamonds, which I store in my safe box. We will need a power tap, because that is how we get power out. And in fact, we'll want 2 of those. And I'll show you why when we set it up. We'll also want 2 access ports. And for that we'll need pistons. This is how we'll put fuel in and take waste out of the reactor. And we will, I think, want 2 redstone ports. And a cyanite reprocessor. For that we will need 1 more yellorium fuel rod. We will need 2 pistons. Oh, and it looks like we will need more reactor casings after all. So let's start building, and we will... Oh, actually... This is what I wanted. Well, okay. we'll start building and we'll come back up and make things if we need to. So, here is our basement. I'm thinking we'll want to build this in the dead center. So, let's actually go up and make sure we get to the center. This magnum torch is in the dead center of our base right now. Well, okay. So it looks like 1, 2, 3 blocks from here. 2, 3. Okay, so this is the middle of our reactor. And the all-important builder's wand. There we go, the footprint for the reactor. Next up, we will need the fuel rods. Now, our reactor design is actually very simple to build, and is actually the most fuel-efficient reactor you can build, or was at some point. The issue with the Big Reactors mod is that the formulae sort of change a little bit every version, so sometimes it can be difficult to make sure that you have the most up-to-date information. So now we've got our reactor controller there, and we will also need reactor casings at each corner. Well, might as well use up the reactor casings we have. All the edges need to be made of reactor casings, and because it'll be 7 by 7 by 3, this is an edge. We will need to cap each of these fuel rods with a control rod. That will allow us to modulate the activity of each fuel rod and thus the power, the fuel usage. We will also want a reactor power tap. Now, I don't actually know if these can go on top or if they have to go on the side. Let's check. Okay, looks like they have to go on the side. So we will put one here and back, and we will put one on the side. So this one is to power our cyanite reprocessor. The cyanite reprocessor is basically a block that takes the waste called, I think, plutonium, and turns it, or no, the waste is called cyanite. It turns it into plutonium, which can then be burned again. So, to fuel the cyanite reprocessor, we will need to give it power. We also need to make sure that we have a way for the cyanite to exit into the reprocessor. So that's what this side is going to be dedicated to. I believe if we put the access port here, we set it to outlet mode, what should happen is that if we put the cyanite reprocessor in front of it, I think it will auto-eject into the reprocessor. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do this a different way. Either way, we're going to need some sort of tube, either a power or an item duct, and I think I've chosen, we're going to have the item duct be the one that is tube-based. That way, if we want to get the cyanite, we can move it somewhere else. Okay, so that will be red. Blue means that's where it will get its water. And then green is the output. So eventually we'll put I think I'm going to put the output on the top. So this will allow us to take the spent fuel. It will come out of this port. We'll pipe it here into the reprocessor, and then after it has been processed, it will rise up where we will put an interface into our ME system so we can store it. At the same time, okay, so this is going to have an interface. We'll put the other access port here, and this is where we will input all of our new fuel. And this side of the reactor is going to be dedicated to controlling it. So, what these redstone control ports allow us to do, we can have one that's going to allow us to toggle the reactor on and off. We'll set it from the signal it receives. So if it gets a redstone signal, the reactor will stay on. If it doesn't have a redstone signal, the reactor will be off. Next to that, we'll put another port. This port will output based upon the energy stored in the reactor. This will be active when the energy reserve is below, let's say, 90%. So what will happen here is that this reactor port will be active if the reactor is below 90%. We'll get something so that it can send its signal over to this port, and it will activate the reactor if its power stored in the reactor is less than 90%, meaning it'll constantly keep itself 90% full of power, which is good. It means we'll always have power, but it won't burn fuel if it doesn't need to. Now, the one thing I want to get right this moment to make sure that I remember to do that is some redstone conduit. So if we put redstone conduit here and here, there we go. Well, I think I've just uncovered a bug. This reactor is not actually complete yet, but if we tell it to activate using this port, it turns on the controller and tells the reactor to get going. What I will do then is temporarily get rid of that so that the reactor does not come online. And I'm even going to replace the controller because I don't want any issue from that. Okay, so, it's a tall room, difficult to port out of. Next, we're going to need some more reactor casings. Oh, okay. So, before we get more reactor casings, looks like we'll need more graphite. Reactor casings. Great. I think this will be enough reactor casings at least. Let's count how many pieces of glass we're going to need. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Oh, I think 13 actually. Let's start with 11. Ugh, I forgot where I started counting. So the advantage of the reactor glass is simply that it lets you look inside the reactor. Okay, we will have 12. Well, I'll just go for it. Make 14. So this is just for aesthetic reasons. I could theoretically cover this all with reactor casing and it would function just the same. But this way we actually get to see what is happening in there, which is nice. Just, I think, from a purely aesthetic standpoint. Okay, great. So we've got everything we need here except the resonant ender inside. So the way this reactor works now is we can put coolant in it. And which coolant we put in will vary the properties of the reactor and thus the power output. What I am going to do is put resonant ender in. Theoretically, well, I actually don't know whether the power properties will be different if it's still liquid ender or flowing. We only have 4 buckets of the stuff currently, so it will be flowing for the time being. Oh my goodness. I completely lost track of the time. We are so past the standard wrapping up point, but I will just finish this off, and you can yell at me in the comments for spending too much time making my reactor. Okay, here we go. We'll put one of these buckets of resonant ender in each corner. Now, if you haven't ever played around with resonant ender, it's a really cool substance. Anything that touches it, and any entity that touches it, so players, items, mobs, gets teleported in a random direction. It's really neat. If you were to fall in an ocean of the stuff, you would just teleport forever. And it's one of the better coolants for a big reactor. I think a liquid called gelid cryothium is technically better, but has different properties. So I think for this reactor, the tests showed that this was the way to go. Okay, so now we will need a stack of fuel. And I'll just take half a stack for now because I don't want to use all of our fuel until we've tested this. We can come over to our input port, add the fuel, and theoretically, if I put that on, yep, the whole thing's booted up, the temperature is rising, and we are getting out 3,000 flux per tick. That's crazy. Using 0.13 millibuckets per tick. A millibucket's a thousandth of a bucket. I'm not sure how much fuel. So the max capacity, well, anyway, looks like each ingot becomes a bucket. So this lasts a very long time, and it produces power for a very long time, and makes a lot of it. So off camera, I will probably hook this up into our power network, get that going. I might even take out some of those solar panels. I don't know, move them somewhere else so they're out of the way of our fountain, since this is right under there and we'll use this to power our ME system. I may also play around with getting this cyanite reprocessor working and getting the whole thing hooked up into the AE system so that it'll automatically refuel itself. Well, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this extra long episode. Wow. And I'll see you again next time.